Welcome to Asian ID. There are nights when a drama is no longer just a drama but a quiet emotional ambush waiting patiently behind the glow of a phone screen. Aren't there? Last night was exactly that kind of night. Wasn't it? What was supposed to be a harmless just one episode before sleep turned into a 3 in the morning emotional collapse because of Secretly Married, didn't it? And perhaps the most terrifying thing about the series is not its snow-covered visuals or its carefully crafted romance, but the way it awakens the buried part of people that still dares to believe in unwavering love. Isn't it? The opening scene alone already felt like an emotional trap wrapped in falling snow, didn't it? There stood Zhai, abandoned by her first love, cornered by family pressure, wandering through a freezing night with nowhere left to go. Didn't she? The snow kept falling like shredded memories collapsing from the sky while loneliness clung to her shoulders heavier than the cold itself. Didn't it? And Hae-in appeared like the kind of miracle modern people no longer believe exists outside fiction, didn't he? Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the calm certainty of someone who had already spent years preparing for her heartbreak before she even understood it herself, didn't he? When he quietly offered marriage in the middle of that storm, the entire atmosphere stopped feeling fictional and began feeling dangerously personal, didn't it? Because deep down, who has never secretly wished for someone to choose them so completely at their absolute worst moment? Hasn't Haonan? The numbers surrounding the drama only made the phenomenon feel even more unreal, didn't they? 5 hours after release, the heat index had already exploded past 10,000, hadn't it? By evening, the drama climbed to 15,412 in popularity and dominated multiple streaming charts simultaneously. Didn't it? And perhaps statistics alone cannot fully explain why millions of viewers suddenly became emotionally addicted overnight. Can they? Because audiences are not merely consuming plot twists anymore, are they? They are searching for emotional reassurance in a world where relationships increasingly feel temporary, unstable, and disposable, aren't they? That is why Hae-in's 11-year secret love struck viewers so violently, wasn't it? Not because the concept itself was new, but because the drama understood something painfully simple about human longing, didn't it? People do not necessarily crave perfection anymore, do they? They crave consistency, don't they? A light left on because someone fears the dark. Breakfast quietly prepared for a sensitive stomach, or years spent loving someone without demanding immediate reward somehow feels more romantic now than grand cinematic confessions, doesn't it? And maybe that is because modern romance often feels too fast, too loud, and too transactional. Doesn't it? Everything today demands instant replies, instant chemistry, instant certainty, and instant emotional satisfaction, doesn't it? Yet this drama slows love down into something patient, restrained, and almost unbearably careful, doesn't it? That restraint becomes its greatest weapon, doesn't it? Unlike many short dramas drowning in exaggerated misunderstandings and emotional chaos, Secretly Married chooses something more dangerous, doesn't it? It chooses emotional hesitation. Every glance feels like a confession trying desperately not to reveal itself too early, doesn't it? Every interaction carries the tension of two adults cautiously approaching happiness while fearing they might accidentally destroy it. Doesn't it? That emotional subtlety is what makes the series impossible to stop watching, isn't it? And perhaps releasing all 60 episodes simultaneously was the cruelest decision imaginable for viewers already emotionally vulnerable at midnight. Wasn't it? Because once the story begins pulling audiences deeper into its emotional orbit, self-control simply ceases to exist, doesn't it? One episode becomes 5, 5 becomes 20, and suddenly sunrise begins creeping through the curtains while viewers sit emotionally shattered beside empty snack wrappers, doesn't it? The performances from Shen and Haonan's Hae-in only intensify the emotional immersion, don't they? This is already their 4th collaboration, yet instead of feeling repetitive, their chemistry somehow feels increasingly lived in and emotionally dangerous. Doesn't it? Shen Haonan's portrayal of Hae-in carries the terrifying calmness of someone who has loved silently for so long that devotion has become instinctive rather than performative, doesn't it? Even behind gold-rimmed glasses and composed expressions, his eyes seem permanently full of unfinished sentences, don't they? And Hae-in's performance as Zhai feels heartbreakingly human because she allows vulnerability to exist alongside strength instead of replacing it, doesn't she? That fragile transition from emotional dependence toward self-worth unfolds with such layered realism that audiences cannot help projecting pieces of themselves onto her journey, can they? What makes their CP so addictive is not simply physical attraction, is it? It is the emotional intelligence hidden inside their interactions, isn't it? The way they hesitate before touching, the way silence stretches between them without feeling empty, and the way longing exists even during ordinary conversations somehow feels more intimate than exaggerated passion ever could, doesn't it? And perhaps that is why social media became flooded with edits, slowed down eye contact compilations, and comments screaming "I'm emotionally destroyed"? Wasn't it because viewers were not merely reacting to romance? They were reacting to the fantasy of being deeply understood without needing to constantly explain themselves, weren't they? The same time, the timing of the drama's release created an almost surreal industry moment, didn't it? On the very same day, Hae-in's other drama, Cinnabar Kiss, also premiered on another platform, didn't it? Two completely different love stories starring the same actress suddenly competed for viewers' emotions at the exact same moment, didn't they? Yet for many audiences, the mature emotional restraint of Secretly Married resonated more deeply than youthful campus longing, didn't it? Perhaps growing older changes the kind of love stories people hunger for. Doesn't it? Teenage romance often feels beautiful because of possibility, while adult romance feels devastating because of emotional timing, regret, and the desperate hope that it might not be too late after all. Doesn't it? That is exactly where this drama sinks its claws into audiences. Isn't it? It whispers to exhausted adults that maybe somewhere in this chaotic world, someone could still choose you deliberately, patiently, and completely, couldn't they? Not for convenience, not for temporary excitement, but because loving you quietly became part of their existence long ago, didn't it? And perhaps that fantasy hurts precisely because modern people pretend they no longer believe in it, don't they? Everyone jokes about staying single forever, protecting themselves emotionally, and distrusting romance entirely, don't they? Yet the moment a story presents unwavering devotion wrapped in tenderness and restraint, millions of people collapse emotionally without resistance. Don't they? Maybe cynicism was never the absence of longing after all. Was it? Maybe it was only disappointment wearing armor. Wasn't it? That is why audiences keep arguing online about whether Hae-in's 11-year secret love is romantic devotion or emotional self-destruction. Isn't it? Some viewers see painful sacrifice, while others see the purest form of love imaginable, don't they? But perhaps the most haunting question is not whether this kind of love exists in reality. Is it? Maybe the real question is whether people today would even recognize such devotion if it quietly appeared beside them in ordinary life, or would they dismiss it as impossible simply because the modern world has taught everyone to stop expecting love patient enough to wait through 11 silent years. Thank you for watching the video. See you again.